Thank you. First of all, I noticed I have two things in common with the former speaker, with Mrs. Rest. First of all, emphasis on mindset. And secondly, I also come to Tel Aviv roughly every 3 months. Okay. One more thing, a lot of the people in the audience are my friends and have known me primarily from my industry background. But in all fairness, if you go back slightly over 40 years back, in the late 60s and early 70s, my primary focus was on education. And then I got sucked into high tech and so on, and I'm glad that in the past 2.5 years, I'm back into education because I love working with the young generation and inspiring them and coaching them. So what you're going to hear here is slightly some of the observations of what I'm experiencing lately as the head of the Entrepreneurship Center at the Technion. Let me see if that works. No, it doesn't. Okay, so we resort to the old way of simply turning slide this way. Okay, so can we put it on in presentation mode? Because it seems like it's in the corner, so let me see if there is any... Okay, you'll find how to do it, and I'm going to talk. So the first question is, what is entrepreneurship? And if you find in the literature, you'll find hundreds of definitions. This is just from Babson College, which is a leader in entrepreneurship in the US. I found something around a dozen different definitions. Don't bother to study all of them, but it tells you that almost everyone has his own angle of what it is all about. I like very much Jim Plummer. I'm going to get back to him in a few slides. He is the head of the engineering school at Stanford. And he basically says, okay, like the young and restless, it means that you don't rest on your laurels, but rather you say, things could be better. And if you are one that wants to change the world, then you are an entrepreneur. Another interesting aspect, there is a lot of discussion about can entrepreneurship be taught. So I want to rely on one of the persons I really admire because I've been listening to him primarily in the old Intel days, in the 70s and early 80s, Peter Drucker, and he says that it can be learned. Namely, not everybody is born Bill Gates or no, it escapes me now. Or, you know, the Mark Zuckerberg or whoever, most people can and should learn entrepreneurship. Now, there are two primary motivations to studying entrepreneurship. One is in the eyes of the person who is studying it. The other one is for us, the people teaching it. So from the eyes of the people learning it, it's not just because you would like eventually to build your own startup. Actually, if you think about it, most of the people graduating today probably are going to change jobs at least 10 times in their career. Okay? So they move around both on the capacity of what they're doing, the focus of what they're doing, the nature of the job, and so on. And it becomes as though their own life is a brand that they need to withstand against competition, which is other candidates for a job and so on and so forth. And the more you enrich your abilities, the better you are marketable, as well as your own skills are better to cope with the changing world. So in a sense, it's building your own capacities. Besides that, we know that a lot of things are happening around us, and business success by itself is also quite a motivator. Now, I mentioned Jim Plummer before. I would relate you to one presentation he made, if you look it up in Google, in January 2013, and it shows a whole set of innovative ideas on how you should go about educating engineers. Because the old way of teaching in a class is really passé. And it has a lot of components to it that have to do with excitement and with what you focus on and so on. I'm not going to belabor on those. I'm going to flip through 2 or 3 slides. I'm not going to go over them. But they give you the sense that yes, you need to teach electricity, or you need to teach mechanics, or you need to teach biomedical or whatever, but this is necessary but not sufficient. You must also inspire the students and teach them on aspects that have to do with leadership, that have to do with innovation, that have to do with entrepreneurship, and so on. And this is the famous T-shape, model that everybody quotes that says you do have this narrow and deep stem, if you would like, which has to do with your own profession as an engineer or as a scientist, but there is this shallow and broad, part that has to do with those soft skills that you would better acquire. Now, so far I talked about it from the end of the student, from the end of those who teach, okay, us. There is, first of all, and now I'm talking about Israel specifically, okay, there is a national interest in that, because if you look at it, and most of you probably read High-Tech Nation, Startup Nation, or have heard about it and so on, or you look at the numbers, clearly, currently, over half of our economy is relying on high-tech. Okay, it's few people, less than 300,000 people are employed in high-tech, but their contribution to our economy, to our export, to everything we're doing is over half. So it's, in a sense, what we call the locomotive that is pulling the whole economy train. Now, when you ask yourself, how did it go about, and this is by itself a lecture of half an hour, which I'm not going to do here, the bottom line is not because of technology excellence. Not that there are no excellent engineers, there are. But there are excellent engineers in almost any country you think about, be it China or India or Korea or Taiwan or any of the European countries. Okay? But it is the entrepreneurship. It is this fact that every year we have over 1,000 new startups starting, and with the statistics, when you say that, let's say, 5% of them are going to be successful, yes, then 5% of 100 means 5 companies a year. If it's 5% of 1,000, it means 50 companies a year. So it is our interest that more and more startups are going to start just by making sure that anybody who can drive a new idea, can drive a new initiative, that increases the chances of success, okay? So the symbol I'm using is it's like a fire, and you need to feed new wood to the fire. So these graduates, these students that do have the motivation to go into entrepreneurship are this new wood to this fire. And this is where the mindset comes about. I see it as my number one role, not necessarily to teach them this skill or that skill, but rather to infect them with the virus of entrepreneurship so that they can eventually become entrepreneurs sometime in their life after they graduate. But so far I discussed why it is important to do it. The problem is the following, and again I'm talking now about the specific Israeli reality. Unlike European and US countries, our students usually start at the age of 22, not at the age of 18. Okay, because of the military service, because they want to spend a year afterwards in South America or in Far East Asia and so on. But that's not only the whole story. Also, I know, now I'm talking about the Technion specifically, but I know it's true also for some other institutes. And in the third year and on, almost every student works 2 days a week in the industry, which has a lot of benefits to it. But one aspect that it implies is that they have very little time for anything else besides the 3 days they study and the 2 days that they work. And especially those of them who are already 24 and more, many of them already have families, babies, and so on. So the last thing they want to hear is about one more class. Okay, they want just leave me alone. I want a check mark on, on my studies so that I can say that I graduated with a degree. Okay, I don't need anything more because employability is no issue today. As you probably know, any Technion graduate, but probably also for many other institutes, okay, is going to find a job in no time, almost. So employability is no issue. So why should I study anything else? Leave me alone. So this is primarily the challenge that we're facing. So what do you do in order to overcome that? Okay, and it's an uphill battle. Okay, I mean, we're working day and night, me and my team, on many, many angles, and it has to do with the infrastructure of the Technion, namely paying visits to the deans of the faculties and to their, I'd say, their key opinion leaders within the faculties and to the people who are leading their projects and so on and so forth, and asking them to get access to the students in order to inspire them. And all the habitual ways like the Facebooks and the other networks that we are using in order to promote our case, as well as we have very great cooperation with the Students' Union and so on. So in all of those ways, we're trying to access each and every student so that at least they will be aware of what we are doing. And once they're hooked onto listening, usually we're attractive enough so that they will follow on and will go into what we offer. So I'm going to spend 2 more minutes just about what we're doing, and then if there's time, probably, there is slight time maybe for some questions. So Bronica, by the way, the Bronitsky family are getting, at the end of today, the Innovator Award for what they did in Ormat, and they did the initial contribution to our center. That's why the center is named after the town in Poland that they came from, which all its Jewish congregation was extinguished in the Holocaust. Over the time, actually, I was updated that the funds that were raised by teams that grew out of our activity already exceeds $300 million. But I must emphasize, my primary goal and the goal of my team is not the business success, but rather the education of the people who go through the process. In every year, we give advice and support to around 1,000 new innovators or entrepreneurs, and we teach in the order of about 20 classes. As far as classes, we have 3 kinds of classes. We have what we call intra-faculty classes, such as entrepreneurship for electrical engineers or entrepreneurship for biomedical engineers and so on, that are being taught by usually a faculty member. The classes are given at the faculty buildings, so they don't need to wander around the campus, and usually they can get credit for their primary degree in that class, and the examples given are from their own domains. So there are all the good reasons why they should take this class. Then we have some introductory classes that are campus-wide, and we have now a minor. Namely, you can graduate as, let's say, mechanical engineer with a minor in entrepreneurship. All you need to do is take 4 classes. One of them is usually the one that is given in the faculty, and the other 3 are given by our center, and they dig deeper into entrepreneurship, including also a class where they practice getting from ideation all the way to a product. Besides the formal classes, the more exciting part is the experiential part or the extracurricular part. And I'll start, and it expands all the way from people just are kicking tires to find out what entrepreneurship is all about, to people who already know what they want to do, but they need some support. The first one is what we call an e-club, which is like a meetup. For instance, this semester we had 2 great ones, one with Kira Rudinsky and one with the ex-general Zev Farkash. And they were attended by more than 300 students each, out of which about 50% were attending for the first time an activity by us. And it's like, hooking them into, why don't you want to listen more about what we have to offer and so on. 3DS is an excellent program. I could spend a whole hour just describing what we're doing there, but basically it's building a startup in 3 days in, let's say, fast-forward motion. What we get out of it is primarily 2 things. One is we create their teams of people who didn't know each other before the workshop, and I can attest from, let's say, the workshop of 2 years ago that the majority of those teams continue to work even 2 years later on things, not necessarily on the same topic that they did in the workshop, but as a team, and that's a kernel for building a company. And anybody, and it's, each workshop is 45 participants who went through that, he got hooked on the virus, he or she. Namely, they're not going to be the same person again. They are going to be entrepreneurs someday or another. And we have 2 or 3 of those each year. So we have in the order of about 100, 220 students each time. And the last, but not least, this is the jewel of our crown. It's called BizTech. It is formally a competition. In reality, it's more like a pre-accelerator that takes 6 months. Actually, the next one is coming soon. The call for application went out about 5 weeks ago, and is going to end on February 25th, namely in less than 3 weeks. And last year we had 115 teams applied. This year I hope we're going to get, again, somewhere between 100 and 120 people applying. And then we use judges to trim them down into 30. Those 30 go into school for about 3 months, where they get a lot of lectures and a lot of mentorship and so on. Then we have another interim judgment, and we trim them down to 12. The 12 go into a very extensive summer program, at the end of which we have a demo day that happens either in late September or early October, and the whole ecosystem is actually attending that. And out of that came the statistics you saw before. Over 50 companies were already built out of this program, and they raised, as I said, over $300 million in funds. The last comment is we are using somewhere between 100 and 200 mentors. All of them are volunteers, okay? And actually, we're running lean and mean, but still see a lot of fun in what we're doing. Okay, these are examples of companies that raised funds and were successful that came out of BizTech. And bottom line is that entrepreneurship can be taught, should be taught, and I hope that we can attract as many of the students. Thank you.